In today's video, we're going to talk about the fishing gear that I use when I go out fishing for my PWC. And I'm going to take you through some of the decision process, how I arrived at the specific gear that I'm using now, and hopefully it'll help you with your own decisions next time you go out and buy some new fishing equipment. One of the simpler ways for a PWC fisher to catch their first trophy fish from the PWC is during summer we have quite large schools of tuna and mackerel come through, and they're actually hitting the bait on the surface. It gives us a really good opportunity to take our PWCs, cast a lure into the bust up and catch our fish.
Oh, still there. Oh, he's there, all right. First cast.
Okay guys, first fish on the new reel. Decent long-tail tuna or northern bluefin tuna. You can tell from the long tail on them, and they're pretty good eating. So I'm going to take this little fella home. Little fella, well, he's about he's got 90 centimeters, so that'd be a good 10 kilograms, 8 kilograms, something like that of tuna. So what you need for that sort of fishing is a pretty specific rig. You just can't use your bottom fishing equipment. You basically need is a high-speed reel, something that will actually wind quite a bit of line per crank, and you also need a long rod so you can cast that lure quite a distance, because it's quite hard sometimes to throw the lure right in the middle of the bust up. Let's try again. It's winding fast. Really fast. Now I'm spinning around because the ski's going right around. There we go. Did I lose it? Oh, I had a good hit, and I got a good hit. Here we go. I think they were mackerel. Over the years I've tried a couple of different rods and reels, and I've had some bad advice on some of the fishing shops that I've been into, and I've sort of worked out eventually what really worked good for me. And what that was a 8-foot rod. This is, brands are not really important, but I'll tell you what I use. This is an 8-foot rod. It's made by Shimano. It's called a Jewel, and it's around about the 10 to 15 kilogram capability. So it'll catch quite a decent fish. I've teamed it up with a Shimano twin power in this case. I started out with Spheros. I found I think the wind retrieve rate wasn't really fast enough. Went to a Saragossa, that was actually quite good. But I had an opportunity to get a better reel and a slightly smaller profile. So this is like a 5,000 twin power. So it's got quite a good amount of drag, quite a good line capacity, and it's got a retrieve rate of 112 centimeters per crank. So that's quite a fast. I think the ratio on this one's 5.7 to 1, but if you can get that sort of ratio or higher, in the 6s, then you're doing fine. The other thing that's quite important is that the guide size. And I had some advice that said get really narrow guides so the line goes through the guides, easily for long casts. But actually, I think that was the wrong advice, because I found that the fine guides actually would catch the line on any sort of loop or any sort of slackness, and you'd end up with pulling the line, snapping the lure off, and watching your brand new lure sail through the air. So I actually reverted to rods that have slightly larger eyelets, and ever since I've done that, I don't think I've lost a lure. So that's the things that I would recommend. 8 foot, that sort of 7'6" and bigger would be okay. Fast retrieve, high gear ratio, so that you can get quite a bit of line back. Because what you're doing when you're casting is getting that lure into the bust up, but winding it very quickly to look like an escaping bait fish coming out of the bait ball. And that's when the predators will pounce on it. Now the other place that I use this rod, because of its casting capability, I guess, and also its capacity to take a reasonable sized fish, it's still got a reasonably light tip, but I actually used this just recently for the mahi, and I went out to a local fad some distance offshore. I had some live bait. I rigged up a single hook on the rig, no swivel, nothing else. Live bait through the nose and caught some mahi. Didn't take long with the liveys, did it? Yeah, it's a small one. Small there, not too bad. Man, they can fight these things, can't they? Now, the reason I use this rod is, first of all, I can swing the live bait out towards the fad a reasonable distance without, hurting the fish. I can actually just pretty much just flick it out and it'll go at least 30 meters without a lot of effort. And it doesn't sort of rip the bait off as you're trying to force the rod around to cast it. So good size for that. Also, the fact that the fish can be fought really well on these. As I said, they're reasonably flexible on the tip and great backbone through the middle here to take a big fish. And sometimes those mahi can really pull. The second way that a lot of PWC fishos cut their teeth on catching some fish is to troll. They'll troll a lure behind the ski and attempt to catch, again, things like the pelagics, the tuna, the mackerel, all sorts of wahoo and other fish like that species. You could actually troll and actually catch things like coral trout on the barrier reef, kingfish, of course. So trolling is also a great effective way of catching your next trophy fish. What I use for trolling is a mixture. It's not as critical in terms of the rod for that sort of effort, and I have a longer rod again that I use for trolling. It's quite a heavy rod that will allow you to catch quite beefier fish, larger fish, and it's also being 7'6" allows me to get that lure out away from the wash a little bit as I'm trolling. So it's good. I've got some quite nice mackerel with this particular rod. So I'll go and grab that and I'll show you what it is. So at the moment it's rigged up for something other than trolling, and this is a Shimano. It's a Revolution travel rod. It actually breaks down into 3 pieces, believe it or not, but it's the heavy one. So it's 7'6". It's 15 to 24 kilograms. So this will allow you to catch a decent fish. It's not particularly a trolling rod, but it suits me because of its capacity. On it, I've got a 14,000 size reel, again, it's Shimano, and this does the job quite well for me, and it has been catching quite a lot of fish for me. This is my second rod. I actually snapped one on a shark recently. If anybody follows me on social media would have noticed that. It was my rod that had caught so many fish over the years, and I was a bit time poor, so I didn't really bother. I just got another one. It served me very well. All right, so what are the needs? Really, line capacity again. You may be trolling with the line out at between 50 and 100 meters behind the PWC. People may say, oh, you need a flexible tip. That's true. You may find a rod with a flexible tip's going to serve you better, but I can't carry too many rods out. I like to carry just what I need. I'm carrying 4 as it is. So this one doubles for other uses, which I'll mention in a minute. The way you can get around the fact that you may not have as flexible tip as other rods and you want to take some of the shock out of pelagic smashing the lures is to use a bit more leader. And I generally, if I'm trolling for things like mackerel or wahoo that will hit it and run, to stop the line snapping, put more leader on. Just run 10 meters of your leader on, and that will give that stretch that you need. Of course, you can also spool your reel with all mono line. I gave away using mono line a little while ago because I did try it under advice. Again, some bad advice, I think, and I actually spooled up one of my jigging rods with mono. I can't remember the exact size, maybe 30 pound. And after using braid, it just felt like a rubber band. I just couldn't feel anything going on. So I quickly abandoned that, went back to braid. And the workaround, as I said, is just use more leader. If you need shock, put more leader on it, and that'll give you the best of both worlds. Now, this rod also doubles for bottom fishing. I use it a lot for live baiting. It's actually rigged up that way for my last trip. And I'll use a paternoster rig, single hook, and this is perfect just to drop the live bait down, and it's got enough backbone again for those big fish. The last rig I want to show in this video today is really my favorite. It's a jigging rod. It's a slow elements PE 2 to 3, I think it is. It has the spiral wrapped guides, so the guides actually start at the top as you hold your reel upside down here, and they actually spin over so that it actually minimizes tip wrap when you're jigging. Really nice. It's a great weight. It's caught some big fish as well. Great for anything from jigging to catching snapper on hooks. Just does the job really well. So the idea of the jigging rod is, if you see the size of it, it's about 6 foot. It's very small, 2 meters. Lightweight. You can tuck under your arm beautifully. I use a Oshia jigger again. I'll take you through the reasons for that in a minute. The Oshia jigger is spooled with PE2 line, so it's very thin with a very high capacity. In this particular case, I think it's a 30-pound, 15-kilogram line, which can, that can stop quite a big fish. The Oshia jigger is my choice. It's a little bit more expensive than some of the jigging reels that you'll get, but still, well within the range for people that are doing fishing all the time. The best feature of this is that you can actually click the clicker over here, which releases the spool. So when you're dropping down the line, you keep your thumb on the spool here, and like a brake, and keep the jig as vertical as possible as it's jumping. So you're controlling the descent. You can also feel when something grabs the lure. If the spool suddenly stops, you're on, and you start to wind. Now, a lot of reels, you have to engage the brake, I guess you'd call it. You'd have to engage that before you could actually wind. But on the Oshia and some other specialist jigging reels, all you need to do is wind, and it will actually engage it. So saves you potentially, a couple of seconds if a fish has grabbed the lure. Before it realizes it's in trouble and drops the lure, you may have engaged it and struck at it. So love it. It's small. It will still stop a big fish. The only reason you probably want to go to a bigger one is to fish deeper water, or a very large, the larger of the species. Things like kingfish that are over the metre long, you would probably not stop it with one of these reels, the 1500. This is, I think, it's 7 kilogram of drag from memory, 7 to 10. You would need something with a bit more drag and a bit more line capacity for the depth. So I would go to the bigger one if you're going to do that sort of fishing. Okay, so that's my 3 favourite rods that I carry. Hopefully you understand the reasons why I've settled on these now. And as I said, brands aren't important. Get the equivalent, something equivalent to that, and you'll be able to chase the same sort of fish that I've been chasing and had some success. I would also just remind everybody that yes, you can get more cost-effective equipment, but if you're doing this sport like I am, I'm pretty time poor. I don't have a lot of time to mess around, and the one thing I hate about the cheaper reels is A, they don't last very long in salt water. B, their drags are normally pretty average and they get a bit sticky very quickly. So there's a good chance that if you do catch that trophy fish, you might actually have it break off from a sticky drag. So just pay a little bit more for your reels. Rods, less important. As you see, I've got the middle to low end of my rod range. It seems to be doing the job very well. I'm not a sponsored fisherman, so I've chose again based on the need and the price tag. But reels, very important. Good braid as well, if you're using braid like I am. Quality braid. The finish you can get with the best breaking strain is always better than the other way around. So there you go. That's the reasons why I settled on those 3 rigs, my favourite rigs. And I do actually carry another rod generally, which sort of doubles as a bottom and trolling rod, believe it or not. But it's just a simple ugly stick 6-foot rod with a overhead reel on it, a Telica 10. And that does help with some bottom fishing when I need a second rod in the water. And I also use it for trolling, believe it or not. So it does actually work fine on trolling as well. Hey, thanks for coming back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Great to see you coming back. And over the coming months, I hope to put more tips and techniques up for you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.